In our last class, we were covering Section 15, Between the Wars, Section 2, when we were talking about Stalin and Mussolini. Today we're going to go to Section 3, Hitler and Nazi Germany. Now, the Weimar Republic struggled from the very beginning. It was led by moderate democratic socialists, so it was attacked by both the left and the right. The left, the communists, and the right, the conservatives, the nationalists, the wealthy class, they all hated democracy. The communists wanted changes, just like Russia, while the conservatives and the wealthy class called it too liberal and weak. They wanted a strong leader. Many wanted to return to the Kaiser. Everyone blamed the government for the hated Versailles Treaty. The Social Democrats that signed it were referred to as the November Criminals. But despite all the problems, the government managed to run the country, at least for a while. Oh, look, it's a baby. How cute. Oh, wait, it's Hitler. Maybe the baby isn't so cute after all. April 1889, Adolf Hitler is born in Austria. It was then part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Now his parents, Alois and Clara, are Austrian German. In fact, the town he was born in was right on the border with Germany. Now, Hitler's father dies when he's 14 years old. Hitler despises the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, which is ethnically mixed, as we covered in class. He really doesn't like Slavic people. He refers to himself as a German. In 1905, Hitler moves to Vienna, hoping to become an artist. Here we see one of his watercolors. He's really not bad. I mean, you can notice that some of the perspectives a little bit off, but he's not really a bad artist. So in the end, he fails. In 1907, his mother dies. He never really got over that. He was very close with his mother. Within 2 years, he's homeless, wandering the streets of Vienna. He was painting little postcards for the tourists, trying to make some money. In 1913, Hitler moves to Munich, which is in Bavaria, Germany. This photograph here, which I took a number of years ago, about 20 years ago, I think. We see the Munich City Hall on the right, and that building on the left with the orange roof and the two spires is the German Munich Cathedral. Bavarians love this because the two spires look like beer steins. But anyway, let's move on. In 1914, as we know, World War I begins. Hitler, as you can see, they actually found this photograph and found him in the picture. Hitler is very excited about fighting in the war, as many Germans, French, British, and Austrian-Hungarians were. Hitler does not want to be part of the Austrian-Hungarian army, which is full of Slavs. So instead, he volunteers to serve in the German army. He's sent to France, fights in the trenches. He's wounded in one of the earlier battles, and later in the war, he actually is wounded in a gas attack. He received the Iron Cross, which is the highest award for bravery. When 1918 comes and the war is over, Hitler returns to Munich. Hitler, like many Germans, is devastated by Germany's loss in World War I. He blamed the Jews and the communists. And the Versailles Treaty hurt Germany's economy. There's high unemployment, inflation. In 1919, Adolf Hitler takes control of a political party. In German, it was the Nationalist Socialist Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, but in English, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. They took the NA and ZI from the, as you can see in the little, I don't know what you want to call that. I guess it was a metal symbol with a swastika. and they called it the Nazi Party. Hitler never called it that. That was a nickname he hated. Now, Hitler is a great public speaker and gains a large following. He gives a lot of speeches in large German beer halls. You see all the people there saluting, but if you look on the table, you can see the large beer steins. Yeah, Hitler wasn't dumb. He gave speeches in front of large drunken crowds and got the, obviously, the applause he was hoping for. Hitler uses the Versailles Treaty of how Germany was what they called stabbed in the back by the new democratically elected German government. This was a very popular political cartoon. It's showing the two men there. The one with the knife was actually the chancellor of the Social Democratic Party, and the man behind him was the vice chancellor. And they have a knife, and he's going to stab the German soldiers in the back. The concept was Germany was winning the war, and the Social Democrats surrendered, stabbing the army in the back. Of course, behind the Social Democrats, you'll see these two ugly caricatures of Jews sitting on bags of money, and in the background, those are the communists with their red flags. So you can see what the cartoonist is trying to imply here, that the Social Democrats, backed by Jews and communists, stabbed the German army in the back, that they were actually winning the war. This was a concept brought forward by Field Marshal von Ludendorff, who was the one who recommended the surrender, because they say they couldn't win the war, and yet he conveniently forgets that and starts telling everyone that they were winning. But oh well. Hitler creates an army of stormtroopers. They were called the Sturm or Beitlung or SA, or they just went simply by their nickname, the Brown Shirts. Like Mussolini's black shirts, the purpose was to use intimidation and violence against Hitler's opponents. You see a black and white photograph of some of them marching through the streets singing these SA songs. They saw anyone from a political, opposition or anyone they didn't like, they would immediately pounce upon them to beat them and, intimidate them. Here we see a color photograph. There's Hitler right in the center of a bunch of the brown shirts. Interesting enough, they wore the brown shirts because in the very early days, there was an Army-Navy store in Munich that actually had a really good deal on brown shirts, these brown uniform shirts, so they got them. In 1923, Hitler and the Nazis tried to take control of the Bavarian government in a coup. The idea was to take over the Bavarian government, then he wanted to do a march on Berlin, similar to what Mussolini did, to take over the German government. It was referred to as the beer hall putsch. Putsch is a German word for coup d'etat. It fails. It started in a large beer hall in Munich. It always starts in beer halls in Munich. Hitler, along with Field Marshal von Ludendorff, and hundreds of Nazis marched to the center of the city to take over the government. The police, though, barricaded a street and fired on the Nazis, ending the march. 16 of them were killed, the rest kind of scattered. Hitler got away but was arrested the next day. He was put on trial with a number of the other top Nazis. He was given only 5 years. Normally, when you are convicted of treason, trying to overthrow the government, you're usually given a death sentence. But the judge, who was a kind of a nationalist himself, who hated the Weimar Republic, though he didn't condone violence, he sympathized with Hitler and gave him a light 5-year sentence, of which he only served 8 months. Now, it wasn't exactly a hard time. Hitler had a private room. He actually had furniture in there, couches, tables. He had somebody who would act as his secretary because he was going to write a book. And his book was called Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf is loosely translated to mean my struggle. There really isn't a word for Kampf in the English language. But that's what most historians have come up with, is my struggle. It outlined his political ideology and his future plans for Germany. Here we see a early edition cover of his book. In Mein Kampf, Hitler was very anti-Semitic. He talked about the Jewish peril. 2, his hatred of what he believed to be the world's twin evils, communism and Judaism. And 3, his ideas of ultra-nationalism. He believed that Germans are part of what he called the Aryan race, which he believed to be superior to other races, the master race, or in German, the Übermenschen. People in this Aryan race, the characteristics were blonde hair and blue eyes. Interesting enough, neither which Hitler had. Now Hitler's going to come to power. In the years after the Putsch, Germany's economy improved thanks to the United States loaning lots of money to them to help pay off their war reparations. Hitler and the Nazis were almost forgotten. And for 5 years, people had jobs, the economy was doing well, people were making money. And as we mentioned earlier in section 1, things were going well. Then 1929, the stock market crash. The Great Depression hurts Germany's economy badly. Germany is in political chaos between the Nazis and the communists. Here we see a truckload of communists driving through the streets of Berlin. And here's a truckload of Nazis driving through the streets. And usually when the two trucks would meet, everyone would get out and we'd have a large street riot. Hitler is very popular again. Whenever the economy goes bad and whenever people are out of work and unemployment goes up, people start to listen to the crazy people. So here, the communists and the nationalist socialists become very popular, and the social democratic government really can't do anything to stop them. So in a choice between the two, they decide to bring Hitler on board. They feel that Hitler could give them the support against the communists and the social democrats to rule. So in 1933, the German government, the Nationalist Socialist, asked Hitler to be the chancellor. It's only second in power to the president. The president of Germany is the former World War I general and hero, Paul von Hindenburg. Yes, he's the man that had the large dirigible named after him that exploded and burned in New Jersey. Hitler actually tried to run for president against him in 1932, but he lost. Hindenburg hates Hitler. He refers to him as the little Bavarian corporal. And Hitler hates him, referring to him as the old fool that lost World War I. Bismarck does not want to make Hitler chancellor. It was a position held once by the great Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor. And Hindenburg thinks that would be a total insult to put this man in that same office. But he's talked into it by the rest of the cabinet. The cabinet feels they could control Hitler. They are wrong. Now, very shortly, within a month of Hitler coming to power, there's a mysterious fire that destroys the Reichstag. It totally guts the inside of the building. This was Germany's Parliament building. Here we see the fires there just totally devastating the building. It would actually be left gutted right through to the end of World War II in 1945. After the war was over, it was actually boarded up and left that way. And only into 1991 was it totally rebuilt inside. And today it is the government building in Germany that holds the Reichstag, the German parliament. Now the communists are blamed for the fire. The Nazis said they were trying to take over. Hundreds are arrested. Hitler uses this as his excuse to grab more power. He basically transforms German government into a de facto dictatorship. And there's open hostility towards the Jews. Hitler passes new laws. These were referred to as the Enabling Acts. They eliminate most civil liberties, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press ends. Other political parties are outlawed, labor unions are closed down, and he starts a Nazi youth group, the Hitler Youth, very similar to what Mussolini started in Italy, except these boys were much more fanatical to Hitler than the Italian youth were to Mussolini. Many of them at the end of the war, these young boys would give their life to fighting the Russians in Berlin trying to save Hitler. This was one of their recruiting posters. The Hitler Youth, for the Germans, for the Führer. And of course, just like in Italy, the goal of the Hitler Youth was to train them to become future soldiers. In 1933, the Nazis opened the first concentration camp at Dachau. They would see prisoners there, political prisoners. They were communists, they were socialists, they were newspaper men. Anyone who went against Hitler or the Nazis would be arrested. The concentration camps started out as large outdoor prison camps because most of the prisons by this time were filling up. The SA, or brown shirts, as we mentioned in the earlier in this section, and their leader Ernst Röhm had helped Hitler come to power. But now that Hitler was in power, they were becoming a problem. You see, they liked to walk around the streets and beat up people in the early days, which was good for Hitler because it helped him gain power. But now that he was chancellor, they were still doing it. And it had become somewhat of an embarrassment to Hitler since he promised peace and law and order, and they were still doing what they did. Also, Röhm saw himself as being Germany's co-leader with Hitler. He saw himself as Hitler as being number one and him being 1A. And this was something Hitler was never going to do, share power with anyone. So in July of 1934, and what becomes known as the Night of the Long Knives, while Röhm and the SA were in a hotel resort in southern Germany having one of these week-long conferences, get-together, drinking heavily at nighttime, something the Germans like to do. The SS swept in early morning hour, arresting everyone and pretty much shooting and killing everyone. Ernst Röhm and 400 other top SA leaders were murdered by the SS, and this will give Hitler more power. Things continue to get better for Hitler a month later when President Hindenburg dies. Hitler now has all the power and combines both positions into one, the position of president and chancellor, and he calls himself Der Führer, or the leader. Now Hitler sets about to build Germany up economically and militarily. Massive public works programs, highways, bridges, sports arenas, and a major military buildup. Unemployment drops by 83%. That's an incredible number. People are doing much better, so they are happy. They think things are turning around, and they credit Hitler for doing it. Now, the Nazis purged the German culture. They want to rid Germany of any foreign and Jewish art. Ironically, a lot of the art, like Vincent van Gogh and Monet, Matisse, Picasso's, are actually taken out of German museums and replaced with kind of boring magazine-style art of German families and farmers. The what they call degenerate art, the Monets, the Van Goghs, the Degasses, and the Picassos, they actually keep for themselves. Very ironic. Modern art is banned. Modern music is banned. They hated jazz. They hated swing music. Only good German art is approved. Also, the Nazis destroyed books they didn't approve of, and they burned them in these massive bonfires. The first one was in May of 1933. They went around all the German cities, into the libraries and bookstores, and gathered up anything that was Jewish, anti-war. They also burned a lot of books by non-German authors like Hemingway and H.G. Wells. Strange, never understood why they did that, but whatever. They had these large fires. They would throw the books in. Then as the books were burning, they would sit back and stand there and give the Hitler salute. This is one of my favorite pictures here, showing some of the Hitler Youth burning books. Look at that kid on the left there. Look at that smile. You know he just threw his biology book in that pile, and he's getting ready to throw his trigonometry book in. After the war, the German government placed plaques in some of the locations where the book burnings were held. This one here, you can see a plaque. You can look and see pages of books like going up in flames. And there's a quote around the outside. The quote reads, Dort wo man Bücher verbrennt man am Ende aus Menschen. The English translation is, where they burn books, they will end in burning human beings. Now, this was written in 1821, a good 112 years before the Nazis' book burnings by the German poet Heinrich Heine. But it was interesting enough to be so prophetic. Now, despite all the negatives, the lack of civil rights, all the other things that were going on, the Germans the economy was doing better, people had jobs, unemployment was way down, the country was doing very well. So the Germans are happy, and they credit Hitler with this for turning Germany around. And things were looking good. But 12 years later, things would not be so good. Well, this ends our section on Hitler and the rise of the Nazis. I hope you enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.